Welcome to It's a Grand Life. Did you know that in the United States alone, 2.4 million kids are being raised by their grandparents or other family members other than mom or dad? 2.4 million. It's a Grand Life is a podcast for those grandparents and kinship caregivers who are committed to making a difference for those kids. Grand families are in every neighborhood, every city, tribe, and territory nationwide. If this is you or someone you love, this podcast is for you. Our goal is to offer hope and resources to help you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us wherever you get your audio podcasts and leave a review. Every new subscriber and review helps us reach others that need assistance. Welcome to another episode of It's a Grand Life. Hi, my name is Craig Nash, and we'd like to welcome you to another It's a Grand Life. And if you were with us last time, you remember we met with the Representative Jamie Thompson from the 28th District in Michigan here, the Flat Rock area in Michigan. And she is in our House of Representatives, and she's also a grandmom running a grand family. So she gets us, and she understands everything we're going through. And first of all, Representative Thompson, thank you so much for being on our program again. But now we're going to talk politics. And she is a nurse by training, and you would think, boy, most nurses want to stay either in the hospital or in the physician's office, but not her. She wanted to run to be our advocates in Lansing, which is the capital here in Michigan. And Representative Thompson, thanks again for being our guest here on It's a Grand Life, and looking forward to talking politics with you.
Thank you. I'm very excited too. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, so let's talk about you. You've said on our last podcast that you really got into politics because your grandkids kind of motivated you to want to be a voice for them and for grand families and kinship caregivers all over the state of Michigan. And you were not favored in the election, and when you ran for the House of Representatives. But tell us the story again, in case folks weren't able to catch the podcast last week. How were you able to get the committees you wanted, being brand new to the House of Representatives? But you identified three committees you wanted to be on, and the good Lord opened the door for all three. And how did that happen?
Well, I think it was definitely a God thing. So being new to politics and not really having a full grasp of what that looked like, I knew that we served on committees. I knew that the committees that I was interested in serving on, and there's a long list of committees. I had mentioned last time, there's a committee on the policy of an issue, and then there's also a separate committee that relates more to the appropriations of the money. It's called like healthcare appropes. Energy appropriations. So your committee here's the way to delegate the money and appropriate the money from the state budget or other programs within the state. And then there's also that same committee for healthcare policy, energy policy. And I wanted to be at the policy aspect of it. Okay. I filled out the paperwork and I told you get to tell a little bit about why do you feel that you are qualified, or why is the reasoning you wanted to be on these committees. So with family, children, and seniors, I requested that committee, and we talked about it's not really a glorified committee that a lot of people want to be on. It doesn't get a ton of news media coverage or big hard-hitting issues such as energy or economic development. But for me, it was personal because of raising my grandchildren, being placed into this role, caring so much about our families and our seniors, and advocacy just as a nurse who I was born to be. So I wrote a little paragraph about why I felt I wanted to serve on that committee. And then healthcare, I am a nurse. So I think that was a bonus to get on that committee. And then behavioral health is a subcommittee of that health. And I really talked about where I see the broken system and the regulations and the red tape and the families and children that have fallen through these gaps within our mental health care, and how important it was to me. Now, something interesting that your viewers may not know, especially if you're not really involved in politics, is there is a House of Representatives that is represented by, right now, 50% Republican, 50% Democrat. And as much as we are so tired of hearing about a partisan divide, party politics comes into play a lot with that. So I could have been right now the Democrats control the House in Michigan, and they control all three branches, but I'm in the House. I could have came in there very partisan and very much opposed to not even showing respect to the other side.
Right.
And I know some members who have done that. Now, if I were to have been that person, the reality is I may have not served on any committee because the Speaker of the House is Joe Tate, who is a Democrat, and he has the ability to say what committees you serve on. If you get any committees, they control everything. So who's ever in power, whoever has the majority of members controls everything. And I had no intentions on going to Lansing and playing party politics. I know I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative woman. I vote conservative for many reasons. But I'm also of the belief that we need to work together. We need to show mutual respect for each other. And I went in there with that mentality. And I was fortunate enough, I think, just because of them seeing that and maybe at the advocacy on my leadership, that I was able to get the committees that I wanted.
That's absolutely great. So you went in with this win-win-win attitude as opposed to, I've heard other folks say party before country, and that doesn't sound like a good philosophy to me. But especially since you are really there to, you feel called to represent families, and especially grand families in the situation that we find ourselves in. And I think it's absolutely terrific that you're on health policy. Of course, we would want a nurse on health policy. And behavioral health, oh my aching back, is that just as I was talking to an advocate out of Colorado who's very much involved in the Littleton Coalition for Grand Families, and talking, she said, Craig, we have a behavioral health crisis in this country, and we need to have the government step in, and like they did in World War II, and create schools where we can have folks go into behavioral health and what have you, because there's such a shortage. And then Representative Thompson, I talked to two of my granddaughters, her best friend's parents, both are behavioral health professionals. And I asked them, I said, one is with the Henry Ford Health System in town and does research all over the world. And the other one has a private practice here in Oakland County. And I said, we have a behavioral health crisis. How come there aren't more folks like you guys going into behavioral health? And they said, because they have to go to school for 6 years, and the max it pays is $80,000. We've got all this schooling and this education, and they both went to very good schools to get their PhDs. And they said it needs to be more financially viable for us to do that. And I said, well, when you add in the component of Medicaid, in the world that we're advocating for, a lot of the grand families have kids on Medicaid, and they do not even cover behavioral health costs. And absolutely, these grand families need to get behavioral health services for the grandkids. So I'm glad that you're on the committees that you are on. The behavioral health issue is absolutely huge. And have you had any thoughts on how we can expand access or expand coverage for our low-income folks or anything like that?
I have a ton of ideas, but I'm in honesty, it's such a tangled web, and I'm learning more and more about it. And I've placed myself in positions with relationships with the health association plans, the CMHs, other representatives that have really been digging into the policy behind that. Mm-hmm. And all I can say is, man, it's a monster. It is a monster full of cobwebs and just a hot mess. The way that I'm approaching it is, I love the fact that you talked to people that are actually involved in that, right. Behavioral health people, psychologists, social workers, because sometimes I think in Lansing, and I see this on my committees, you have committees of people that are, say, serving on behavioral health. Some of them actually might be as an insurance agent or a farmer or a business owner or a lawyer.
Right.
You have someone that knows what legislation looks like on the ground when in play, opposed to just thinking this looks really good on paper, is very different. So me being there as a voice to break apart some of the legislation that I've seen, that I say, this sounds really good on paper, right. But I've worked in a healthcare setting. I know that's how this plays out. So I think right now, one of the biggest challenges, and I'm really spearheading this, is the unaccountability for the CMHs. So community mental health has taken over basically mental health in the state of Michigan. Many
Mhm.
years ago, when we closed our psychiatric hospitals because we thought that it was cruel to institutionalize people, somebody came up with an idea of what's this going to look like? Let's just revamp it. And they came up with community mental health.
Right.
What a lot of people don't know is they have no accountability to the legislature. They are their own entity. They don't, they have a contract with Michigan. So they
Mhm.
work under a contract, but they're not accountable, where I can't bring them before a committee and say, I need you to open your books. I need you to tell me how many patients that in Oakland County or Wayne County that you treated for this diagnosis. What did their care plan look like? What was the follow-up? What were the interventions? They would basically choose to say yes, forthcoming, and do that, but they don't have to do that. They don't have to. And that's what we keep running into, them not wanting to be open and honest with us about what this is looking like. I hear a lot about, oh my goodness, I talk to so many families, and I love that we've got these advocacy groups such as your It's a Grand Life
Yep.
advocacy, because there's more and more. There's an organization called Advocates for MI Youth Michigan, I believe. And
Mhm.
it was just a Facebook group of moms that they started sharing their stories on problems they were having getting their children access to the care they needed. And it became bigger than that. And they actually formed a nonprofit organization out of it.
Wow.
So I talk to them frequently. I've met with them on Zooms. I've been calling out our state hospital because of the failures that they like. So I could go into so many things, and I want to keep it focused. So number one is rating in the CMHs, making them accountable, having
Right.
them, insisting and demanding the transparency.
Right.
Um,
Outcomes. Right.
yes. The second thing is talking to the families, hearing their stories, and not letting those stories fall on deaf's ear. So when I found out, for example, I found out that back in June, we all know, if you've been watching the news here in Michigan, there has been, we only have one, or had one, we still have one, but at the time we have one mental health inpatient facility for children with the diagnosis SED, which is severely emotionally disturbed, and they could have multiple diagnoses, autism, cerebral palsy, so on and so forth. But these are children that do need to be um, in an inpatient facility. Okay.
Right.
Outpatient care is not going to help them or their family. So we had one, the Hawthorne Center, which is in Wayne County. It's not in my
Mhm.
district, but it's in the county I represent. Multiple complaints about neglect and abuse of children, from broken water pipes, flowing water on the children's head, mold growing in their rooms, children losing a ridiculous amount of weight, just complaint after complaint after complaint, till finally they ended up making the decision, the state, to close the facility down. But where would they send those kids? So they
Wow.
sent the kids to Walter Reuther, which is an adult psychiatric hospital run by the state. So they sent them there in June. All of a sudden the news breaks out on the news that some whistleblower teachers that work at the facility said, hey, these kids haven't been outside since they got here. This is late August, early June. So because they had co-mingled them with the adults, they had not thought ahead. How are we going to keep them separated from adult psychiatric patients, because they are children and have special rights and protections? How are we going to set up the fencing? How are we going to set up the time they get to spend outside to keep them safe, that they're not running away or they don't have access to data? None of this happened. And they just kept them inside. And I thought, you are kidding me. You are criminalizing children that are there for a medical condition, a psychiatric medical condition, and they are not criminals, and they don't need to be treated as if such. So I just kept beating that drum. Why are we not bringing them in? Why should they not be held accountable? This is a state department that we have entrusted our children to take care of them.
100%.
And why are we not hearing about this in committee? Why are not we bringing them in, demanding, what is going on? What are you doing? So me and some other legislators signed on to a letter to ask the ombudsman, the auditor general, I apologize, the auditor general. So the auditor general's role in the state of Michigan is to investigate or pull data. So very nonpartisan. They don't pull the data to say, we need this legislation, I want to know this is going in for any other reason other than to strictly pull data. So we wrote a letter asking them to audit what is happening at Hawthorne with real data. How many complaints, how many interactions with their patient rights advocates, how many complaints with the state, so on and so forth. So they drug their feet, but they finally did decide to audit them. So
Okay.
I was really pleased. I just shared that a press release on that. So they have decided to audit them. And we actually got a tour of the facility coming up. So we are going to be, I think it's February 12th. We're actually, me and some other representatives are going to go tour the facility. Um, I wish that we could just pop in unannounced to see what was really going on. But there unfortunately are, even as a state representative, I don't get to just knock on the door and say, hey, I'd like to come
I'm
in and see
here.
what you're doing.
Right.
So we have to follow protocol, but we have set up a meeting with parents to hear very fresh concerns and issues that they have that, are fresh on our minds, that when we do tour this facility, we know the right questions to ask because we already have the answers to them. That is huge getting in there. And we also have, and I'm sure you have a lot of families that are raising their grandchildren
Hmm.
that because of the dynamics of maybe they did lose their parents, maybe their parents are deceased, maybe their parent is in prison, maybe their parent is an addict, maybe their parent, whatever happened that they have to deal with has caused so much trauma that
Right.
they've gotten into trouble themselves and they're in the
Right.
juvenile justice system.
Right.
And we've seen failures there. We've seen very embarrassing headlines out of the state of Michigan, how the juvenile justice department has failed our children. There's allegations of rape and neglect and abuse, and they did the same thing in Wayne County. Because of all those allegations, they closed the juvenile detention facility that housed all of the juvenile offenders in Wayne County. When they closed the facility, they sent them over to Dickerson, which is an adult jail.
Oh,
And now they have them there and they don't know who's answering questions. So they send, apparently Wayne County sent a state official to oversee this and make sure that because of all of these allegations, everything's being run properly and these children are indeed safe. What comes up in the news? The state employee they sent there now has allegations for sexual
oh,
misconduct.
Lord have mercy. It
You
just,
don't hear that. You don't hear that on the news, though, do you?
no, you do not. No,
No, you
it's,
do not.
and,
And
you know,
I can't sit back and say that's okay. That makes me so angry I could spit nails.
but Representative Thompson, that is a nonpartisan issue. All
Mhm.
you've been talking about is kids, and
Mhm.
we all should be on the side of kids here. This is not a Democrat or Republican idea, and just applaud your efforts there. I've been by the Hawthorne Center. It's on Haggerty Road, south of 7 Mile, if I'm not mistaken, in Northville, and it's a very nice piece of real estate there, and so it's that's such a shame that it's now closed because of facility problems. Because I'm not a behavioral health expert, but I would think separating kids from adults would make sense. And what I have learned, and since becoming the host of this podcast, It's a Grand Life, is come from a grand family perspective. There's a lot of challenges regarding getting support. And
Mhm.
depending on which camp you fall in, did you are you working with your grand family through foster care system, or are you the guardians of your grandkids, or have you adopted them? Depending on which door you choose, it can have negative financial effects for grand families. And um, you and I are okay financially in this situation, but many of the folks that we talk to are not. And
Mhm.
they were not experts at planning their own retirement, let alone having 1, 2, or 3 new mouths to feed. And I'm
Yes.
running into folks that are telling me that folks at the foster care level are encouraging grand families to become guardians of their grandkids because the counseling and other benefits of support that are available to foster families are not available to guardians and adoptive parents. And a lot of folks like my wife and I, we one of the reasons we like being a guardian is we really didn't want all the governmental intervention coming in our house and seeing, and not that we have anything to hide, but
Mhm.
less government is good. So it's,
Mhm.
but that, so that was one of the main reasons we went the guardianship route. But it's like there are so many more kids in our state, in all states, that are being raised by kinship caregivers like you and your husband and my wife and I, as opposed to foster care families, and they're not getting any support. And Yeah, it's a real concern. I mean, have you run
It
into
is.
that?
I have heard about some bills in the past. There were kinship bills out there that would support and encourage and give, financial support to even aunts and uncles that have come forward and are
Right.
raising the family members and keeping them with the family and not putting them in the foster care system. I think the bad advice that we get from a lot of people that we don't know what path to take and we trust what we're told. Maybe we don't have time to do all the digging and investigating ourselves, which is a shame. We shouldn't have to. I think that when you seek out help, or even me in my personal situation, I had told you we have guardianship of our grandchildren, but we did not adopt them. We're not fostering them because there's such a difference there that a lot of people don't know, and I don't know a lot about the
Right.
foster care aspect. I've had people that I know that say, well, why wouldn't you fill out the paperwork to not only be the guardian, but foster those children? Because you can get so much assistance from the state if you do so. Um, I don't believe in, if I don't need that assistance, why would I take it?
Right.
I've heard people say the kids, if they were foster children, they would be given the opportunity to have free college education. Have you ever heard that rumor? Someone told me that one.
I did hear that.
Sign up.
Yeah.
Sign up for that, because if they're a foster kid or they're in the foster system, even though you're raising them, they have the ability to get free college once they're of age. Um, all of those things, that the rumors we hear, the misguided truths. I feel like, wouldn't it be awesome if there was unfortunately a government website that was very clear and concise and gave you the specific tools that you needed in a nice, clean, readable format that didn't send you in 1,000 different directions. Or maybe a government department that when you have those questions, you can call and they actually answer the phone instead of sending you in 1,000 different directions that nobody picks up the phone. That dynamics is what I would like to work on. I also believe that, like, I didn't know that when I paid my attorney to get guardianship of the grandchildren, I guess I assumed that because my daughter had passed away and the dad wasn't present, that would mean like that money would go towards filing for adoption.
Hmm.
And then I realized that I will still have to file for adoption.
Wow.
And then I'm sure there's dynamics and reasons why grandparents that raise their grandchildren, even if their child is alive and still maybe sees the child, that they would want to adopt them for insurance reasons, for possibly even like life insurance reasons, right? If you want
Right.
to
Right.
get life insurance, or them getting your life insurance, if you want to be able to insure them should something unfortunately happen, you can't just get life insurance on anybody. You have to be a legal parent of that child.
Right.
So all of these dynamics and which way we go just seem so complicated, and we're all going through a different part of it. And sometimes I think a lot of us in these lower income neighborhoods are people that are low income. And like you said, we're okay, but we're not great.
Right.
I
Right.
don't have thousands of dollars in the bank. We live
No.
paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
But those people just don't have those resources to help them, and they just struggle, or they are getting, maybe food stamps, maybe Medicaid, but then they're that Medicaid is not getting them the assistance they need for the kids that have dealt with the trauma of many of these situations,
Right.
or maybe their own personal trauma. And then they have a state that's saying, if you just, gave them to the state and made them a ward of the state, they get all the help that they need. I'm not okay with that. And I
Right.
think that there was a bill that did pass. So there's a brighter side to this. It probably didn't affect a lot of your listeners, but it was
Mhm.
important that it got passed. So in the state of Michigan, there was some access to funds for grandparents that are raising their grandchildren if they're guardians and they meet the income requirement. But it never included tribal members. So any of the tribes in Michigan on reserves, so on native land, which there's a lot of Native Americans that are raising their grandchildren across
Right.
the state of Michigan, they could not get access to that money because it was, the Native American government is very separate from the state. They don't enter into agreements with them, and I don't blame them. So we were able to pass legislation that now tribal communities that are raising their grandchildren and meet the income requirements can get assistance.
Awesome.
There's so much more we could do. And I'm even open to stories and problems and situations that I may not even be aware of, or ideas from people. I'm not too proud to say, what do you think the solution should be? And bring it to me. Let's talk about it. Let's see what that looks like in legislation. I think we've gotten to a point, and you've seen this, government is there for a reason. When government becomes too large and there's too many departments, and there's no oversight to reining in those departments and seeing, is that money within that department actually doing good?
Right.
Is there follow-up? How long has this program been in place? And did it really help anyone, or did you just throw a lot of money at a problem that never solved it?
Right.
So I would like to really look in and dig into that, because I do believe people need a leg up and they need the help when they need it.
Right.
But we should not be continually pushing free on people, because that never, and what's that going to do to the next generation of those grandchildren? It's going to be generational.
Right.
And give people the help that they need. Give them the help they need.
Right.
But don't set them up to fail.
I couldn't agree more. And that is bipartisan language. We just want the common good for everybody, especially in our state of Michigan. But I know our listeners at home are saying yay and amen right about now to have a representative from our state talking about getting the support needed to support these grand families and kinship caregivers. And I just can't thank you enough for being our guest here today. And I hope, Representative Thompson, you will know that you are welcome anytime. And I'm running into a number of advocates in the state of Michigan, in fact, across the country right now. But I would love to get our Michigan advocates together with you because these folks have been on the front line for years, and they've got some excellent ideas that perhaps could really, help you as you try and navigate the walls of the Capitol here in Lansing and get some things passed. But just love your attitude and love your heart.
I would love that. I would be so open to that. I think that is exactly what we do. We sit down and we talk to people, and we get the ideas and the perspectives from them. And then we say, okay, how do we start from the bottom up and get these things into legislation that is good policy for grandparents and people raising children without their parents. And there's so many dynamics to that, right? There's the mental health, there's the healthcare, there's the financial. Gosh, I'm so excited to do that. I would be willing to do that today. I would love to do that tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to chat with your associate there and see if we can't set up a time to get folks around our state to get together and have a dialogue. I think it'd be a phenomenal start. And I'm talking to advocates all over the country now with this podcast, and this could be the first state of all 50 where this type of format could be a blessing to the whole country, because we've got advocates in California and Colorado and Florida and Texas, and they're all trying to help grand families. And unfortunately, the grand families are exploding. There's a huge need. There's just more and more of us in every state that I come across. And no one knows what the word kinship means. We're finding that out, that, is that something from the Beverly Hillbillies, or, we don't know, but, and so we all need to get on the same page regarding the jargon and see if we can't kind of move the needle for, it's really, as you've said time and time again, it's all about the kids. And that's why you're here. And that's why we're so thrilled to have you today as our guest on It's a Grand Life. And I hope you'll come back real soon and give us any legislative updates or anything that we can help with boots on the ground here. But we want to definitely set up that meeting of the advocates for the state of Michigan with you and see if we can't start helping you in some way get the message out. So thanks so much.
That.
Oh,
I love that.
It's Lord willing, it's going to happen. And thanks so much for being our guest today. And thanks for being a great advocate for the grand families and for those 3 grands that you're just crazy about. And it's been such a blessing to know you and to have you on our program, and can't wait to have you again.
Oh, thank you. You too. Thank you. And thank you, all of your viewers that are coming together and advocating and making sure that your voice is heard. Please don't stop. Don't stop. You're making a difference in everyone's lives.
Well, that is a word for everyone across the country. Don't stop, no matter how many times you bang your head. There are
Mhm.
representatives. If they're like Representative Thompson, there are representatives in your state that care as well. Let's go on behalf of these kids and do the very, very best we can. And thank you so much for being our guest here on It's a Grand Life, and look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thank you for joining us today for It's a Grand Life. It's a Grand Life provides vital content, regulatory updates, and subject matter experts that are committed to supporting the 2.4 million kids and their caregivers from every neighborhood, every city, every tribe and territory nationwide. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review. Every new subscriber and review helps us reach others that need assistance. As caregivers, we are united in purpose. We are driven by hope while providing strength for today and hope for tomorrow. We are truly making a difference while living the grand life. If you have a suggestion for a future episode, please reach out to us. But we'll see you next time for another It's a Grand Life. Thank you for joining us.